My name is Mason Cole. They locked me in a shed, drugged me, and left me for dead, my own parents, all because I uncovered the truth about our family's darkest secret. A legacy built on silence, power, and blood. I thought family was supposed to protect you. I was wrong. This is the story of how I burned their empire to the ground, and became the last one standing. Before we dive into this twisted family saga of betrayal, secrets, and revenge, do me a favor, hit that like button if you believe not all families are built to protect you. Subscribe for more gripping, first-person stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew about. Loyalty, now buckle up. Because this isn't just a story about survival, it's about becoming someone they never saw coming. I grew up believing that blood was thicker than anything, thicker than truth, thicker than pain, thicker than the questions you're not supposed to ask. In our house, family came first. That was the rule. It was spoken at dinner tables, whispered during hard times, and tattooed into my heart by the time I was 10. We lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Morgantown, West Virginia. Just rows of aging homes with creaky porches and rusted mailboxes, where everyone knew everyone, but no one really knew anything. Our home sat at the edge of a hollow backed by thick woods. The kind that swallowed sound at night and breathed fog into the mornings. My dad, Curtis, worked maintenance at the university. He was the quiet kind, one of those men who said more with a grunt than a full sentence. My mom, Barbara, stayed home. She was the glue that held everything together, at least that's what I believed back then. I was the oldest of 3. I mowed the lawn, fixed the leaky gutters, and walked my brothers to the bus stop. I was the protector, the one who stepped in when things got rough. I wore that role like a badge. Then Uncle Ray came back. He'd been in prison for something my parents never fully explained, a misunderstanding, they said. He's still your mother's brother, my dad added. So we made up the guest room, even though there was nothing guest-like about him. He moved in without knocking, without thanking anyone. Just a duffel bag, a limp in his left leg, and eyes that scanned the room like a predator figuring out where the exits were. He had this voice, slow, dry, like sandpaper dragged across concrete. And every time he smiled, it felt like a lie. At first, I tried to stay out of his way. But then things started happening, little things. My mom's wedding ring went missing one day. She brushed it off, said she misplaced it. Then my youngest brother Eli swore he saw Ray outside his bedroom at 2 a.m., just staring through the crack in the door. And I started to notice Ray watching people more than talking to them. Especially at night, when he'd sit on the back porch smoking, staring into the woods like something out there was calling him. I mentioned it to my dad once. He grunted. Told me to mind my own business. Family sticks together, he said. Especially now. I wanted to believe him. God, I did. But something in that house had shifted. The warmth was gone. The way my mom smiled felt off. Like she was performing happiness instead of living it. I didn't know it yet, but that was the beginning. The first crack in the glass, the first whisper that maybe, just maybe, blood wasn't as thick as I'd been told, or worse. That mine didn't count, and once you start noticing things, you can't unsee them, not ever again. Ray wasn't like the rest of us. He didn't fit the rhythm of the house. He moved differently, too quiet, too calculated. You'd turn a corner and there he'd be, leaning against the wall like he'd been standing there for hours. Watching. Always watching. He made the basement his territory. Said the guest room upstairs made his back ache. My parents didn't argue. My mom just brought down an old mattress and some sheets, and from then on, that was his space. We weren't supposed to go down there, but every now and then, I'd hear noises coming through the vents. Whispers. Footsteps long after everyone had gone to sleep. Once, I heard what sounded like a woman crying softly, but when I pressed my ear to the vent again, it stopped. Just silence. Dense and cold. A week after Ray moved in, the first $20 bill went missing from my dad's wallet. Then 2 more from my mom's purse. My parents never said anything out loud, but I saw the way they looked at each other across the table. The silence between them started growing teeth. Ray never worked. Never left during the day. But at night, he'd disappear for hours, usually after dinner, returning just before dawn with his boots muddy and eyes bloodshot. I asked him once where he went. He looked at me with that dry grin of his and said, "Handling family business, Mason. Grown folks kind of work. You'll understand someday." I didn't like that answer. And I didn't like the way he said family, like it was some secret club I hadn't earned my way into. The day everything changed, I came home from school early, teacher in-service day. The house was empty except for Ray. I found him in the living room, going through a metal box filled with old letters, newspaper clippings, and black and white photos of people I didn't recognize. Some of them had red XS drawn across their faces. One even had cleared scribbled in the corner. I must have made a sound, because Ray slammed the box shut and looked up, dead-eyed. "Curiosity can be dangerous," he said. "What were you looking at?" I asked. He stood up, walked over, and set a hand on my shoulder, heavy and cold. "You ever wonder what this family used to be? Before your daddy played handyman and your mama learned how to smile for pictures?" He leaned in, close enough for me to smell the stale smoke on his breath. "There's a legacy here, Mason. One with real power. Not everyone's cut out for it, but maybe you are." He walked past me, back to the basement. Legacy. That word stuck in my head like a splinter. I didn't know what he meant. But I knew one thing: whatever Ray had dragged into our house, it didn't belong here. And I wasn't about to let him bury it beneath our floorboards, not without a fight. The garage had always been my dad's domain, half workshop, half graveyard for things that should have been thrown out years ago. Rusted tools. Boxes of broken Christmas lights. A cooler with a cracked lid we hadn't used since I was 9. But after Ray moved in, something changed. My dad started locking it. I wasn't supposed to notice. But I did. One Saturday, while my parents were out getting groceries, I slipped in through the side door. The old lock was laughable. I'd watched enough YouTube tutorials to pick it in under 2 minutes. At first, everything looked normal. Dusty shelves. Oil stains on the floor. But then I saw it, an old green storage trunk tucked beneath a tarp. It had a heavy padlock on the front and fresh scratches around the edges, like someone had opened it recently. I found the key taped underneath a nearby toolbox. Inside were 3 sealed envelopes, marked with wax stamps. One had my mom's maiden name scrawled across it, Barlow. Another said Langridge, and the third, just initials, E.H. Underneath them were folded maps, aerial photographs, and clipped newspaper articles going back decades. One article, from 1992, detailed the mysterious disappearance of a state employee near Fairmont. Another showed the photo of a woman I'd never seen before, with the words "unpaid" written across her forehead in red ink. Then I found the ledger, page after page of handwritten names, dates, and dollar amounts. Some entries were scratched out. Others were circled. There were phrases like "debt settled in full and collateral secured, Eli pending." My brother's name. Right there. My stomach dropped. None of it made sense. Not yet. But every part of me knew I wasn't supposed to see this. I packed everything into my backpack and waited for them to come home. When they did, I laid it all out on the kitchen table. No games, no build-up. Just, "What is this?" My mom froze mid-step. My dad stared at the documents like they were ghosts. No one moved for a long time. Then my mom whispered, "Where did you find that?" "In the garage. Locked up. Under a tarp." She turned to my dad. "You told me it was gone." "I thought it was," he said, his voice like sandpaper. I asked again, louder this time. "What is it?" My dad sat down slowly. "It's called the exchange." "The hell does that mean?" He looked at me. Not like a father looks at his son, but like a soldier sizing up a threat. "It means you're in over your head, Mason. My mom reached for the envelopes, but I stepped in. "You've been hiding this. From me? From Eli?" Her voice cracked. "It's bigger than us. Bigger than you." That was the moment I realized, my family wasn't caught up in something, they were something, and whatever the exchange was, I just pulled the pin on a grenade I couldn't put back. I don't remember falling. Just the bitter taste in my mouth and the way the world spun sideways. One minute I was shouting, demanding answers from the two people who raised me, and the next, my knees buckled. My vision tunneled. My body turned into rubber. I heard my mother's voice as I hit the floor, "I told you not like this." When I woke up, everything was dark. Damp. Silent, except for the wind creaking through wooden slats. My head throbbed like I'd been hit with a cinder block. My mouth was dry. My wrists ached, tied behind me with something coarse and tight. Panic set in. I tried to stand, but the room swayed. I was in the shed. Our backyard shed. The one my dad always said was too old to fix but too solid to tear down. No windows. Just dust, tools, and the cold. I screamed until my throat went raw. No one came. Hours passed, or maybe it was a day. The only light came through a crack near the roof, just enough to show the shape of a shovel and an old lawnmower. My stomach twisted in on itself. I thought of Eli. Of how his name had been written next to the words "collateral secured." I thought of Ray, and that box full of X'd out faces. And then I thought of my parents. My mom, who used to sing me to sleep when I had nightmares, standing over me as I lost consciousness. I'd always believed I was the protector of this family. But they didn't need protecting. They needed a witness gone, by the second night. I stopped shouting. I just listened. Rats scurried across the rafters. The cold pressed through the wood like fingers. I started talking to myself, quietly, to stay sane. I repeated what my father said, "You're in over your head, Mason." No. Not anymore. I realized the truth in that dark room, not just about the exchange, but about them. My parents hadn't been dragged into something. They chose it. They chose legacy. Secrets. Power. They chose Ray. And they left me in that shed like garbage they didn't know what to do with. I wasn't their son anymore. I was a threat. An inconvenience. I don't know how long I was in there, 2 days, maybe 3. On the 4th morning, the door creaked open. Sunlight spilled in like a punch to the face. I didn't look up. I just waited. Ready to be dragged out or silenced for good, but it wasn't Ray. It was Eli. He didn't speak. Just untied me with trembling hands and whispered, "Don't tell them I helped." Then he vanished. I stumbled out into the daylight, legs barely working. The house stood quiet behind me, just like always. Same porch swing. Same curtains, but nothing was the same. They locked me away like I didn't matter, and now, I knew, I couldn't save them, but I could make them regret ever choosing the exchange over me. I left West Virginia the same way ghosts leave the living, quiet, unnoticed, and with unfinished business. After Eli let me out, I didn't run straight to the police or blow the whistle. I knew better. The exchange wasn't some local crime ring. It was a generational machine built on silence, leverage, and bloodlines. I was already marked. If I went to the wrong person, I wouldn't live long enough to regret it, so I disappeared. I hitchhiked through Pennsylvania, changed my name by the time I crossed into Ohio. Mason Cole became Michael Rayner. I burned everything that tied me to my old life, school records, IDs, even the photo of my brothers I used to keep in my wallet. It felt like cutting off a limb, but I had to. The Mason they knew had to die for me to survive. For the next 7 years, I lived in the shadows. I worked odd jobs, dishwasher, night janitor, warehouse loader. Cash under the table. No paper trails. I slept in basements and cheap motels, saved every dollar I could, and spent my nights at libraries and internet cafes, reading everything I could find on criminal networks, cult psychology, legacy crime syndicates. You'd be surprised what's public if you know what to search for, and what's hidden in forums with no names. I studied the history of the exchange from the outside, piecing together fragments I remembered from that trunk, those maps, those newspaper clippings. I learned about disappearances that were never solved. Families that vanished off the grid. Mysterious donations to local officials. The deeper I looked, the more I realized the exchange wasn't just tied to my family, it was my family, the Barlows, the Langridges, the Coles. We weren't victims. We were architects. For generations, I began to train, not just physically, but mentally. I learned social engineering, how to read people, how to get into locked rooms without keys and out of situations without being remembered. I met others like me, runaways, ex-cult kids, broken sons and daughters trying to rewrite the ending to a story someone else started for them, but I was different. I didn't just want freedom, I wanted retribution. I kept my distance from West Virginia. Never called, never checked in. I didn't even look up Eli. Not yet. I didn't know if he was a victim or the next chosen heir, but every day, I woke up with one purpose: to come back smarter. Sharper. Stronger. By the time I turned 28, I had a new name, new skills, and enough evidence to light the first match. I'd built a wall around my pain. No more questions. No more wondering why they did it. I knew the answer now: legacy over loyalty, but I wasn't their legacy anymore. I was their reckoning, and I was coming home. I returned to West Virginia the way a hunter circles back to the place where the blood trail began. 7 years had passed. I'd buried Mason Cole behind layers of fake names, forged resumes, and silent exits. Now I was Michael Rayner, a quiet, polite consultant with no attachments and an impeccable background, one that wouldn't raise suspicion in a town that still whispered the name Cole like a curse behind closed doors. I didn't go to my old neighborhood. Not yet. I needed someone on the inside, someone they'd forgotten, someone still tethered to the exchange but low enough on the food chain to talk. That's how I found Wendell. Wendell Barlow, my mother's second cousin, lived in a crumbling house near Cheat Lake. A hoarder by nature, paranoid by necessity. He hadn't been invited to the main gatherings in years, not since a falling out over unauthorized entries in one of the ledgers. The family called him unstable. But I knew better. Wendell was a leak waiting to happen. I posed as a new recruit, an eager outsider claiming to be from the Eastern Network, sent to reconcile the forgotten files. I used just enough real names and legacy codes to make him pause, then nod. About time someone came back to clean up, he muttered, leading me inside. Inside were names I hadn't heard in years, and one I never wanted to see: Eli Cole, status, initiate, position, heir, 3rd tier, clearance, full, as of 23rd birthday, assignment, observation, asset retention, my brother. The one who untied me from the shed. He hadn't just stayed, he'd risen. I didn't know what hurt more, that he was in it, or that he hadn't warned me. Anything else you need? Wendell asked, wiping his glasses with a trembling hand. The family'll be mad if they know I let you down here without clearance. I smiled. Don't worry. I won't tell them a thing. That night, I copied every name, every location, every transaction that could expose the exchange. Then I made my decision: the vault would burn. The ledgers would vanish, but not before I lit the match with the truth in my pocket. Eli wasn't innocent, but I wasn't there to save him anymore. I was there to bury the family that betrayed me, and I had just found the shovel. I returned to Wendell's place just before midnight, the smell of lakewater and pine thick in the air. Cheat Lake shimmered quietly in the distance, unaware that something ancient and ugly was about to be erased from its shores. In my duffel were the USB drives, 3 of them, encrypted, hidden in vacuum-sealed bags. Copies of every ledger, every transaction, every sick detail that had spilled from the vault. Names, dates, coordinates, bloodlines. I didn't need to carry the burden of the exchange anymore. I just needed to end it. Wendell had vanished, probably tipped off by a whisper from the network, or maybe just his own paranoia. Didn't matter. The house was empty when I returned. I slipped inside like a shadow, past the towers of newspaper and jars of pickled nothing. The trapdoor creaked as I opened it, but I didn't flinch. I descended into the vault for the last time, the beam of my flashlight sweeping across the rows of ledgers. Each book was a grave marker. Each one held the rot of generations that fed on silence. I took a moment, just a moment, to remember who I'd been the first time I walked into that room. Confused. Shaking. Still hoping my brother might have been dragged into something he didn't choose. That hope was gone now. I opened a red gas can and started pouring. Across shelves. Along the floor. Over the ledgers. Gasoline soaked into the paper like it had been waiting for this moment. I lit the match and dropped it in the center of the room. The fire didn't roar. It consumed. Slow, deliberate. Like it had a memory, smoke followed me up the stairs. I walked out without looking back, duffel slung over my shoulder. By the time I reached the edge of the property, flames were licking through the windows. A soft orange glow reflected off the lake. It looked almost peaceful, but peace wasn't what I felt. I felt awake. For years, the exchange had existed in whispers and codes, in locked boxes and forced silence. Now it was burning. I stood there in the tree line, watching the past go up in smoke. The weight on my chest didn't vanish, it changed. Became sharper. More focused. The ghosts weren't gone. They were with me now. Every child silenced, every person marked cleared in those books. I wasn't alone. They had chosen legacy over love. Power over family. Control over their own son. Now, they had to face what they created. I didn't know where Eli was. Not yet. But I knew I'd find him. And when I did, he'd have to look me in the eyes and see what his silence turned me into. The fire crackled behind me. It was only the beginning. It was fitting that they chose Christmas Eve. The perfect mask, family, warmth, fake smiles wrapped in garland and guilt. I parked a block away from the old coal house and walked the rest of the way under a sky full of stars that felt like silent witnesses. Through the frosted windows, I saw them, gathered around the long oak dining table like nothing ever happened. My mother placing a roast in the center, my father pouring wine, cousins clinking glasses. Eli sat at the head, dressed in a dark suit, hair slicked back. The heir apparent, no empty chair for the son they buried alive. I slipped in through the back, the way I used to when I was a kid sneaking out to meet friends. The old screen door still squeaked, but no one heard over the jazz playing from the speakers and the hollow sound of laughter. I walked straight into the dining room. The moment they saw me, the air changed. Utensils froze mid-air. Mouth stopped mid-laugh. "Merry Christmas," I said, setting a black speaker on the table. "Mason," my mother's voice cracked like thin ice, "don't bother." Eli stood slowly. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," I said. "But I have a gift. For all of you." I pressed play. The audio filled the room. Wendell's voice, shaky but clear. "They moved the bodies under the greenhouse. Curtis said it had to be clean, no blood on family land." Eli was there. Watched it happen. Didn't flinch. The exchange always collects. Debt. Blood. Silence. Then came the names. Names of local officials. Judges. Business owners. Families connected by legacy, bound by corruption, faces turned pale. Forks hit plates. One cousin whispered, "Oh my God." I looked at my father. "How long did you think you could keep this buried?" He didn't answer. Just stared with those dead eyes, the same ones I saw the night they locked me in the shed. Eli stepped forward. "You think this ends anything?" "No," I said. "I know it ends everything." Behind me, sirens pierced the night. I'd timed the release of the recordings perfectly, emails to every local news outlet, every federal office that ever sniffed around the exchange and backed off. My mother dropped her wine glass. Red liquid spread across the white tablecloth like blood blooming through snow. I loved you, she whispered. You were our son. No, I said. I was your insurance policy. Until I wasn't useful anymore. I turned and walked out as flashing lights painted the snow in red and blue. I didn't wait to see who ran or who begged. I didn't care, the empire they built on shadows was crumbling. And I was the one who turned on the lights, let them toast to tradition. Let them taste the ashes behind their teeth. I gave them the truth for Christmas, the gift they never wanted. The fallout didn't come all at once. It rolled in slowly, like a storm spreading through every crack the exchange had tried to seal for decades. The recordings went viral in under 48 hours. Local news couldn't keep up. National outlets sniffed around, and then the feds kicked indoors. By New Year's, the exchange wasn't a secret anymore. It was a scandal. Arrests came in waves, judges, police captains, real estate tycoons, even a pastor. Names from the ledgers I'd memorized were splashed across TV screens and headlines. But not my parents. Not Eli, they were gone. My mom and dad vanished the same night the sirens showed up. Packed bags, slipped into the dark like cowards. I imagined them driving down back roads in silence, disguises in the glove box, arguing about which name to use next. Eli disappeared just as fast, but I knew better. That wasn't fear, it was strategy. He'd been trained for this. Groomed. Conditioned. And if I had to bet, he was already rebuilding what I had burned. Somewhere else. With someone new. Because that's what legacy does, it adapts. I stayed behind, walking through the ruins of the life they tried to bury me in. The coal house was seized and boarded up. The backyard shed, my prison, was now just rotting wood surrounded by police tape. I walked past it once and laughed. It looked so small now, so powerless. People whispered when they saw me in town. Some called me a traitor. Others nodded with quiet respect. A few just crossed the street. I didn't care. I wasn't there for approval. I didn't need to be understood, I just needed to finish. I rented a small cabin outside of town, not far from where the vault once stood. I kept the copies of the ledgers hidden in a safety deposit box across state lines. Not as a threat, but as a reminder. Of what they did. Of what I survived, of who I had to become. I wasn't Mason Cole anymore, not really. That version of me died in a locked shed with a broken heart and 1,000 questions. The man who stood now wasn't a victim, he was the last one standing. Sometimes, I still hear their voices in my dreams, my mother calling my name, Eli's whisper at the shed door. I wake up in a sweat, hand reaching for a knife I no longer carry. But then I breathe, and I remember, I'm free, not victorious. Not whole. But free. They taught me blood is everything. That family is sacred. But all they really taught me was this: family doesn't always save you, sometimes. They're the ones you have to survive. And in the end, I did. I survived them all, the exchange. The secrets. The legacy. I am the last Cole standing, and I made damn sure they'd never forget why. If this story had you on edge, questioning loyalty, legacy, and the true meaning of family, don't leave just yet. Like this video if you believe survival sometimes means walking away from everything you once loved. Comment below, what would you have done in Mason's shoes? Subscribe for more true style stories filled with betrayal, secrets, and redemption. New uploads drop every week, stories that dig deep, hit hard, and stay with you, because sometimes the truth isn't just painful, it's liberating. Thanks for watching.